I want to talk about someone I discovered quite recently who doesn't directly speak about language learning. His name is Vinh. He's a public speaking coach with a YouTube channel that's honestly a goldmine. Now, you might be thinking, why are we going to speak about a public speaking coach when we are dealing with languages? But let me tell you, it will get quite clear in a few minutes. A little bit of backstory. I have this Italian student who originally came to me for Dutch classes. Then he moved from the Netherlands to Spain to work for an American company, and he decided to switch his focus from learning Dutch to improving his English, in particular his pronunciation. He works on a very tight schedule, especially because I guess it's the American style of working. So we figured out that personalized podcasting could be a way better solution for him instead of having like a weekly class. And here is how it works. Every week, I prepare a 15-minute audio class that he can re-listen to several times over the week, for example, from home, while commuting. He told me he listens to that while, for example, he goes on a walk. Sometimes he sends me a recording of something that he would like to have checked by me, things that he said during a meeting, of course, no sensitive information, and I correct him. Sometimes I take videos from YouTube also, or other materials, and I help him notice specific patterns. For example, he has the tendency to have the voice always going up at the end of the sentence. This is a trait that it's very repetitive, also when he speaks Italian, but the problem is that it gives a certain impression that is unfortunately a little bit like he sounds uselessly shy or uncertain about what he says. And in my opinion, that's detrimental for the impression that he gives. Definitely, his colleagues know him well, but let's imagine that he's going to speak this way, for example, with new clients or with, in general, strangers. You just need to get some self-awareness and then learn to correct yourself. So every week, I also provide him with notes and I tailor my editorial plan, let's say, based on his feedback. For example, sometimes he tells me, okay, I really liked this format instead of that one. Or, for example, now I have to prepare myself for a certain kind of presentation, I don't know. He's told me several times that actually he feels that he learns way more like that than with traditional classes. And of course, it doesn't surprise me. Around 10 days ago, something interesting happened. So he told me that he tried to speak a little bit faster during a presentation, but he wasn't satisfied with the results. So I started thinking, was it actually a matter of vocabulary or pronunciation? Because in his opinion, it was a matter of pronunciation specifically. But usually, he has a pretty good accent when he pronounces the words individually. So I ask myself, is there something more to it maybe? There is definitely more to it. Not just in his case, but in many cases actually. We are having a conversation in your target language. You know the words, you know how to pronounce them individually or even all together. But somehow, anyway, you have the feeling that you cannot get them out fast enough. Or you hesitate, for example, you use too many filler words, or you lose your train of thought. That's not actually a vocabulary problem. That's not even a pronunciation problem. It's a thinking speed problem. It's a preparation problem. And that's exactly what led me to Vinh channel. So I was researching material for my student, and I was just blatantly typing how to speak faster. And I stumbled upon a Vinh channel, and it was literally a rabbit hole. There's one particular video that is under 15 minutes. That was the topic of the podcast of 3 and 2 weeks ago. And in that, Vinh covers two major problems. The first one is how to speak faster, and the second is how to think faster. So, of course, his focus is public speaking, but I do think that most of the insights are absolutely applicable to language learning too. First, Vinh speaks about articulation, and he recommends some specific exercises to improve how clearly and quickly you can produce sounds in English, for example. But it can be applicable, of course, to any language, because it's just, speaking faster, it's exclusively a matter of how we train our mouth and the muscles in general, all the things that we have in our mouth. As language learners, we focus on grammar, new words, pronunciation of individual letters or sounds, but we completely forget to actually train our mouth to work in a different way. The kind of sounds that we have to produce are simply different. If you don't specifically practice articulation, so the actual physical act of producing those sounds, you're always going to struggle, no matter how good your vocabulary is. What Vinh recommends, and what I am recommending to you right now, is to practice articulation exercises regularly. These kind of exercises to improve your articulation are usually tongue twisters. And of course, I know it's very painful, I know it's very uncomfortable, but also reading out loud, recording yourself, and re-listening to yourself, or shadowing native speakers, but usually this is quite hard, honestly. So listening and repeating directly after them. Something that you can do that is a little bit more pleasant is to simply sing along your favorite singers. So the key is that you have to train the actual physical mechanics of your mouth and not just the mental knowledge. In the second part of this video, Vinh speaks about how to think faster. Probably the second one is something that I feel more attached to because I am the person with very slow reflexes, so I'm absolutely a disaster during debates because I cannot reply immediately, and all the things that I want to say usually come to my mind like 3 days later. So, of course, that's not really very effective. Anyway, so what he does is that he gives us some strategies to become more ready when answering questions so that we can avoid using, for example, too many filler words or in general, looking unprepared. Now, we can apply this to language learning as well. The point is that you haven't trained yourself to answer quickly enough, and that's a completely different skill to develop. You can know all the words, you can pronounce them perfectly, but if you haven't practiced using them in real-life conversation, that's going to be a pain. I mean, you're going to freeze up. How can we overcome this problem? By repetition, because when we speak fluently, it's because we are putting sounds blocked together like Lego bricks, but made of sounds, and we are not actually thinking about the single words. We are just thinking that a certain sentence is supposed to sound in a certain way. And that's why when we speak a language well, we don't think about grammar anymore, but we think, this sentence might sound odd, so probably it's not correct simply because it doesn't sound familiar to my ear. So the benchmark to recognize whether a sentence is going to be correct or not is how it sounds and not the actual words. What we need to answer fast is what he calls communication frameworks. It's like having a specific scheme in your mind that you're going to use as a base to build your answer on the spot. So, for example, he speaks about like the key thing that you can do right now, or the 3 most important steps to blah, blah, blah. Of course, we don't need to use exactly the same framework, but still we can build our own frameworks for language learning, which means simply practice more or less the same sentences several times a week. This is what happens when you journal. Because of course, when you journal, you're going to repeat part of the vocabulary more or less every single day. On a hand, it might look inefficient because you're going to use always the same words. But on the other hand, you're actually just becoming more fluent at using them. You are consolidating your knowledge. And on top of that knowledge, you can add all the rest. Journaling is only one of the options. Another option is, for example, talk to yourself in the language you're learning. Prepare some mock conversations when you're going to do something that you're sure you're not going to be prepared about. For example, when I came to Brussels, my French was very rudimental. And after more than 1 year, I needed to go to a doctor. And what I did was that I simply prepared a draft, and I was reading that while talking on the phone. And I prepared a draft of all the sentences that I wanted to literally say. For example, my symptoms. I also imagined what kind of words are they going to use. For example, how to say appointment. I reviewed the times of the day, how to say in the morning, in the afternoon, how to tell time, the hours, the minutes, and so on, the numbers in general. If we sacrifice a handful of minutes to become a little bit more strategical, we are going to simplify our lives in a crazy way and are going to, of course, learn faster and better. If you don't want to talk to yourself, try to at least think in the language. And I swear it works. In this way, you're going to bring the language that is at the end of your priority list during your daily life. It's going to climb your priority list. It's going to be much faster for your brain to go and pick up the words that you may need. And of course, in all of this, let's not forget to accept imperfection, because if you want to do everything right at the first try, you're just going to make yourself uselessly tired. So here is my challenge for you. Go watch Vinh videos that you can find in my description and watch it with your language hat on. If you find this helpful, please let me know in the comments. If you try any of these strategies, I would love to hear how it goes.